Hello, students. We've been looking into this chapter of the lifelines of national economy. And when we say the lifelines of national economy, we do not necessarily imply that we are only talking about India, but we are also talking about internationally, any country for that matter, if it needs to prosper, if it needs to be and if it aspires to be rather part of the global economy, the global society, then it has to pay attention to its transportation, its infrastructure. They can't do without it. You cannot have, forget about good industries or a manufacturing base. Say for a country which does not have proper infrastructure in terms of roads or railways or airways, you would not be able to attract international, even tourists for that matter. Even if your country has been spectacularly gifted by Mother Nature, you still would not be able to attract tourists because there aren't better roads or railways, or there's very poor connectivity of air. Then, even then, people would not be interested at all. So what we see today is that in the modern economy and in the modern society, in the era of globalization, you can't do without it. And yesterday we looked into the waterways, and we also mentioned and discussed that India has wide variety of rivers and tributaries and distributaries, but for some reason we have not been able to harness the power of these rivers and the value that these rivers can offer us properly, because uh, of course there is massive population pressure which India reels under, and we've been eating up the river shores all the time. The contractors do it, most of the time is now the rivers, because of the excessive damming, they do not have water throughout the year. Now, even the rivers which used to have water throughout the year have been now converted into, a very intermittent kind of water. You now see them absolutely devoid of water, and only thing that you can see is miles and miles of riverbed, but not enough water in it. I can say this from my own personal experience when I was very young, and we used to cross the river Ganges over the bridge in Patna. It used to, the river Ganga used to appear massive, majestic. Now, while you're crossing the bridge on top, River Ganga just appears to be some kind of, some kind of has been. It might have been the mighty river at some point in time, not anymore, except probably during the monsoon rains, when, of course, it is flooded with water. So these are the reasons why you cannot have a waterway system, because the ferries, the steamers, the boats, they need to run on water, and they need to have water as a reliable partner. You cannot have, when if the water is unpredictable, and it is not able to play the role of a reliable partner. Now let's come to major seaports. With a long coastline of 7,516.6 kilometers, India is dotted with 12 major and 200 notified non-major, minor or intermediate ports. These major ports handle 95% of India's foreign trade. Naturally, this is something which is common to all the countries, whereby the international trade usually happens through the water, that is through the ships and through the oceans and through the seas. It rarely happens through trains, and a very little of it happens through aircrafts and airlines, because those ventures turn out to be extremely expensive. The Kandla in Kutch was the first port developed soon after independence to ease the volume of trade on the Mumbai port in the wake of loss of Karachi port to Pakistan after the partition. So you have to understand that Karachi was, that is now in the state of Sindh in Pakistan, used to be one of the very important ports of the undivided India. And once Pakistan was carved out of India, Karachi went to Pakistan, and we did not have any major seaport apart from Bombay. And so Kandla in Kutch was the first port that was developed in the independent India to cater to the international trade, primarily to the Gulf countries and to Europe. Okay, now Kandla is a tidal port. It caters to the convenient handling of exports and imports of highly productive granary and industrial belts stretching across the states of Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, and Gujarat. So Kandla essentially caters to the produce of these states of India, that is the western states. Bombay is the biggest port with a spacious, natural, and well-sheltered harbour. The Jawaharlal Nehru port was planned with a view to decongest the Mumbai port and serve as a hub port for this region. Marmagao Port, Goa, is the premier iron ore exporting port of the country. This port accounts for about 50% of India's iron ore export. Students, if you remember in the previous chapter, that is when we were studying the manufacturing industry, I had told you about this, that Goa happens to be the one of the very important sources of iron ore, which it exports to countries like South Korea and Japan. It produces top quality iron ore, though we only associate the state of Goa with tourism and beaches and nice location and scenic beauty. But of course, it also happens to be one of the very important sources of foreign revenue. Moving along the east coast, that's the next paragraph, you would see the extreme southeastern port of Tuticorin in Tamil Nadu. This port has a natural harbour and rich hinterland, thus it has flourishing trade, handling large variety of cargoes to even our neighbouring countries like Sri Lanka, Maldives, etc., and the coastal regions of India. Madras is one of the oldest artificial ports of the country. Now, students, you have to understand what is the difference between a natural port or a harbour and an artificial port or a harbour. A natural port is something which is, as the name suggests, yes, of course, it is very, very natural. You do not have to really work hard on it, and the ships, because it is you gift it that way, and the ships can automatically start docking, and there's nothing that needs to be done, much rather that needs to be done, because nature has already facilitated everything. But an artificial port is something, of course it has the sea coast, of course things there, but then it is not it is not as natural, and it's not as convenient. You would have to do apply your inputs there. You would have to add value to ensure that it becomes an operational harbor or a port, okay, because you'll have to develop that area. So certain things will have to be done artificially to develop it into a full-fledged port which can handle large ships. Since the whole challenge is about handling large ships, because you do not all want because if only the small ferries can come in, then you cannot call it a major seaport. Then that will never become a major seaport. It will forever remain just a port. But if you want to convert it into a major seaport where large ships can dock in, then of course you would have to work a lot to ensure that. Okay, now airways. The air travel today, airways, the air travel uh, today is the fastest, most comfortable, and prestigious mode of transport. Of course, we all know it can cover very difficult terrains like high mountains, dreary deserts. Guys, dreary word essentially implies very depressing, dull, repetitive, boring sort of. It's not that it's dangerous, nothing. As the word gives an impression as if it's dangerous deserts, but no, it's very boring, repetitive, depressing deserts. That's it. Dense forests and also long ocean stretches with great ease. Think of the northeastern part of country, that is the states like Manipur, Nagaland, Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Tripura, those states, marked with the presence of big rivers, dissected relief, dense forests, and frequent floods and international frontiers, etc. In the absence of air transport, air travel has made access easier. Students, you have to understand that till very recently, at least in the northern part of the country and the states, the trains used to go only till Assam, okay, and that too only till Guwahati, and gradually, and and for a very long period of time, Indian Airlines used to cater to the passengers of northeastern India, because it was far more easier to develop the airports compared to developing the railways, because the terrain, the geography is extremely challenging. It's very uneven, and lots of forests and forests and forests, never ending stretch of forests. And it is only now that especially after Rajdhani Express started going from Delhi to Guwahati, and then now Dispur, and I am told new railway lines are under construction, and they plan to take it to other states in the northeast, that is the states like Meghalaya and Arunachal Pradesh and Manipur and Nagaland, and to all these places, because for many, many years these areas have still been catered to and covered by and serviced by the Indian Airlines, and now, of course, the other private airlines as well. Uh, so that is why airlines, of course, important. We also saw that, yes, and we also know, rather, that it saves time, and yes, it saves time, though on an expensive side, but it saves time, and it is, of course, very, very convenient. The air transport was nationalized in 1953. Air India provides domestic and international air services. Pavan Hans helicopters, strength, though it's not mentioned here, but let me tell you that the air transport was nationalized in 1953. Now we are talking about a situation whereby you have to understand that in the early, that is before independence of India, the Air India, that is the your airline used to be run by the Tatas, the Tatas. So it was privately owned, and it was in 1953 that the government of India, that is after independence, about 5 years after independence, the government of India nationalized the airlines and made it Air India, and of course. But you have to understand, till 1960s and early 1970s, Air India, now you would find it definitely strange to believe that Air India used to be considered one of the top five airlines of the world. Okay, and for many years it was top 10 airlines, international airlines of the world, Air India. Of course, today it is nowhere in top 25, but then yes, at one point it was. Pavan Hans Helicopters Limited provides helicopter services to oil and natural, that is ONGC, in its offshore operations to inaccessible areas and difficult terrains like the northeastern states and the interior parts of Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, and Uttarakhand. Strength, because it has mentioned Uttarakhand, all of you have seen the helidrome, which is very close to Shahar Sithara. They are all choppers which are parked there, and they keep ferrying people from here to all different parts of Uttarakhand, because that saves enormous amount of time. Within 30 minutes, within 40 minutes, you are in all. It can cover all areas of Uttarakhand. And just imagine a situation if you have to go to places like Uttarkashi and Badrinath and Kedarnath just by road. It would take you days, literally. And that too only when we are talking about when the weather is favorable. Imagine how you would reach these places, which would become inaccessible for you if the weather is not favorable. Thank you. We shall start tomorrow.